morning. Can everyone please be seated? Thank you. Again, good morning. Welcome to the dedication of the first public peace garden honoring the over 2 million women veterans. I am Anika Bell, a Navy veteran, construction owner, and beauty business entrepreneur. I'm also a doctoral student. I will be serving as your Master of Ceremonies this morning. I want to say thank you to the 89th New York Guard Band for their musical accompaniment as you were being seated. The band is based at Camp Smith in Cortlandt Manor. This nationally recognized band is under the direction of Commander Russ Ebersole on trumpet, Sergeant Tatsuya Handu on flutes, Specialist Kerry Maloney on alto sax, Specialist Catherine Pisano on flutes, Specialist Andrew Shulera on trombone. And now I would ask you to please stand for our national anthem. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramp that he watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Thank you. And can you please remain standing for a blessing from our Reverend Viviana DeCohen, who is a veteran of the United States Marine Corps, a 2021 National Trailblazer Award recipient, Mama V to innumerable students and veterans throughout the country, and until recently, the Director of Veteran Service Agency for City of Mount Vernon, New York. However, this week, she was named the Director of New York State Division of Veteran Services by the Governor. An honor well deserved. Let's give it a round of applause for Reverend Viviana DeCohen.
Great morning, everyone. Let us pray. Dear God, we want to thank you for this day that you have designed with us in mind, God. We're asking your blessing upon Virginia Giordano, CEO and Chairman of the Board for the Barbara Giordano Foundation, for laying it upon her heart that women who have served should be honored in such a wonderful manner with this garden. We're asking your blessings of peace and healing upon this garden, so that when the women come and are amongst this place, God, allow your spirit to rest on us, God, to rule and abide, to heal us, Lord God, to surround us and cover us, Lord God. We want to thank you this day for thinking of us, God. And God, continue to bless all those that are here who have served and will continue to serve that we may never be left from your presence, God. This we ask in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
You may all be seated. It is now my pleasure to introduce the chairperson of the board of the Barbara Giordano Foundation, Ms. Barbara Giordano. Virginia Giordano.
That is so funny because my whole life I've been called Barbara, but Barbara was my older sister. And so people always assumed I was Barbara. So I think Barbara is here right now making sure that she's being recognized. So not by accident. So, everyone has heard the expression, it takes a village. Well, in the case of this beautiful garden, it took a town, the town of Greenburgh. Paul Feiner, the town supervisor, who supported our vision from the very first day, giving us wise counsel and guidance. John Sexton and Christina Linder of the library and the library board, who immediately embraced our vision and welcomed the addition of this garden to their property. And by the way, the library has several wonderful displays of books about women veterans, so please make sure you go into the library and take a look and see what they have to offer, as well as there are pictures in the front windows of the library of some of the women veterans who are here today. Allison Bergman and the Girl Scouts, who were cheerleaders from the very first, and in the spirit of the Girl Scouts, has offered to help maintain this garden to ensure that it will always be beautiful. To Jim Deermeyer, the horticulturist extraordinaire, his incredible knowledge, hard work, and patience in answering all of my questions, and they were a lot, and many concerns were truly invaluable to this entire project. To the men of the Department of Public Works and Parks and Recreation, who literally did all of the heavy lifting, such as leveling this land. When I decided, the board decided to build this garden, I thought, the land looked flat to me, and I thought this would be a great spot. But it is not, and it was a lot of work, and so we owe them really a debt of gratitude for leveling the land, putting up the wall, also putting into concrete the signage, etc. So on behalf of the board and the advisors of the Barbara Giordano Foundation, we offer to all of them our sincere gratitude. The mission of the Barbara Giordano Foundation is twofold: to provide women veterans with holistic wellness tools that address the unique challenges that they face after transitioning from military service, and to educate the public about the sacrifices that the over 2 million, probably closer to 3 million, women who have served our nation have made since the American Revolution, often done without any recognition or real public awareness. The foundation wanted to put a face on these women by establishing a place that will serve as a constant reminder of their service, a special place that reflects their strength, beauty, and endurance. And this is this garden. Our hope is that this garden, which was designed specifically to include only plants that had meaning, such as loyalty, love of country, patriotism, dedication, and was also designed to always be in bloom. So every season, every time you come here, you will see things in bloom that will always be green. We want it to be a place that people will come, strangers will become friends, a place of calm in a world that sometimes gets very hectic, and a place to appreciate the true beauty of nature, our planet Earth, and each other. Our sincere hope is that other communities will follow suit and find a way also to honor our women veterans. Thank you. At this time, I think it would be really important. There are women veterans here today, and I would love for you to just stand and be recognized. So if you could stand up.
Thank you. Thank you, Virginia. And now I am very pleased to have the honor of introducing Mr. Paul Feiner, the supervisor for the town of Greenburgh. But before he steps to the podium, I would just like to say a few words about Mr. Feiner, in case there is anyone in the audience who does not know him, although that would be hard to believe because Mr. Feiner is truly a man of the people. In 1991, he was elected town supervisor of Greenburgh, the largest town in Westchester County. Paul is currently the longest-serving chief elected official of any municipality in Westchester County. His accomplishments are too many to list. However, his success in being reelected speaks on how people feel about him and his commitment to making life better for all his constituents. Mr. Paul Feiner.
Thank you so much. It's really an honor and a privilege to say thank you to women veterans who have given so much for our country. And it's by time our nation recognizes the contributions of women veterans. There are over 2 million women veterans in the United States, and they've achieved many, many successes. We have women veterans who have become 4-star generals. We have women veterans who commanded ships. We have women veterans who earned medals of honor. We have women veterans who have held public office, who piloted space shuttles. In 2000, women were only 4% of veterans' populations. By 2040, the percentage will be over 18%. And maybe one day the future chair of the Chief of Staff will be a woman, Secretary of Defense will one day be a woman. We're grateful to women veterans who have fought the global war on terrorism. We're grateful to those who sacrifice their families. Women veterans are willing to separate from the families to protect our democracy. They've missed birthdays of family members. They've frozen in sub-zero temperatures. They have fought in jungles. They've lost limbs. Their families have endured career disruptions, and some of their children have been separated from them. So again, on behalf of the town of Greenburgh, we really are grateful to the Giordano Foundation for sponsoring this fantastic garden. Every time I go to the library, I'll reflect on the contributions of female veterans and their contributions to our democracy. And again, as I said on Veterans Day, when we had a ceremony, at most of our meetings of the town board, people are yelling and screaming at us, and that's what democracy is about. So I'd like to thank the veterans for making it possible for people to complain, to express their feelings, to yell and scream, and there's no ramifications. So I'm looking forward to the next town board meeting. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Feiner. I would now like to introduce New York State Majority Leader, Andrea Stewart Cousins. Senator Cousins is known throughout the state as a champion of such progressive causes as voting rights, gun safety, health care, and especially women's rights. We are honored that she was able to take time out of her very busy schedule to attend today's dedication. Thank you, Miss Andrea Stewart Cousins. Good morning.
Good morning.
It is just such an honor. I do want to thank you, our wonderful dynamic MC. She's amazing, vet, and of course to all of the veterans and certainly the women who have served and continue to serve our country. I want to thank Virginia on behalf of your sister, who I'm sure is so proud of what you and your family do for all of us and for this wonderful, wonderful garden. Again, let's give them a huge applause. Thank you so much to the Barbara Giordano Foundation. And I am just so proud to represent Greenburgh and to be part with the town and with their amazing veterans organization who continue to make sure that people recognize that we are standing on the shoulders of these great veterans who have ensured our democracy. I want to give a shout out to Hugh McCauley and to all of his troops who make sure that we never, ever, ever forget a vet. I am here, obviously, and thanks to the town and the town board members and all of the town representatives of Great Greenburgh, because this is truly a unique place, and to be here where we have a peace garden dedicated to women really rounds out a continuous celebration this week of Veterans Day. Usually it's November 11th and that's it. But I'm happy that this year, the day before on the 10th, I was at Gordon High School, where there was a first of its kind dedication of a garden that was the remembrance of the 100-year anniversary of the tomb of the unknown soldier. And just like this garden will be tended by the young people, the freshman class at that high school will make sure to take care of the garden. We expect them to know so much about our history, and yet many times we don't engage them. That garden, this garden that will be tended to by the Girl Scouts, allows us to inform the next generation of the contributions. In a time where history itself is being challenged, in a time where people don't necessarily want to know how we got to this place, I am amazed and heartened by the amount of things just like this that continue to come into our lives that reaffirm that we didn't just get here easily. We got here because people who saw the ideal of America on paper by the founding fathers decided that that vision was big enough and strong enough to encompass so many more people than were originally conceived. And that's what this is today. We are reminded what women did. We are reminded how, even though in the background, even though they were not allowed to be part of the armed services originally, they were always there. And when those doors opened, they came in, as many as could be allowed, despite gender bias, despite racial bias, despite so many things. Women stepped up, and this garden reminds us of this. And I cannot leave without giving special tribute to Greenburgh's own, Dr. Olivia Hooker. She, although she's passed, was 103 when she died. But Olivia Hooker, black woman, was the very first black woman
to join the Coast Guard. Greenburgh can be proud of Olivia Hooker's legacy. Yeah, just so you know. So, the governor did a few good things, just this week around Veterans Day. Reverend Jacoan, congratulations. We are so happy that you will be heading our Division of Veterans Affairs on the state. And she also signed legislation. I see my colleague Senator Mayer here, as well as Assemblyman Abenanti here. She signed legislation that we in the legislature put forward to make sure there's a women's advisory committee, the first that we've ever had, that deals directly with the plight, the needs, the specific details around women's veterans. We are so happy that we continue to acknowledge that our veterans have done a lot, but we in elected office have so much more to do. God bless you. Thank you again for this Peace Garden. Thank you for making us recognize and celebrate our history. God bless all of us. God bless America. And let's continue to make that legacy stronger and stronger. Thank you.
Whew, that was good. I would now like to introduce New York State Senator Shelley Mayer, who is a longtime friend and supporter of the Foundation's mission and a vocal advocate for women veterans. In fact, she recently co-sponsored a bill that Governor Hochul just signed into law, which waives certain fees for veterans organizations so that it will make it easier for them to provide services to our veteran population. We are so pleased to welcome Senator Mayer and thank her for her continued support. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you all for your music, and thank you to the Barbara Giordano Foundation and my friend Virginia Giordano for making it her mission to ensure that women veterans got noticed. This isn't the first of their efforts. This is a series of efforts over many years. Some of you may remember walks to raise money, spiritual and holistic efforts to deal with returning women veterans. The projects that they have undertaken recognize the uniqueness of women veterans' needs. The grit they had to get into the armed services, the determination to make it through a tough time, and then the challenges when they get home. And so this garden is such an important thing. One, that it's ever blooming. I'm so happy about that. Come here in wintertime, and you're still going to see something alive and growing, because that is our mission here, to be alive and responsive every day. And secondly, I know how many kids come to this library. It's so important that our next generation comes out here and says, why is this garden here? Because we are talking about women who served the United States and preserved our democracy. We want them to know the story. We want them to know the history. So it's an honor to be here. I look forward to seeing it bloom all year round. Thank you to the Giordano Foundation for your long-standing commitment to these women while they serve and when they come home. Thank you.
She is a dedicated public servant, and we are delighted that she has joined us today to say a few words.
Thank you very much. And I'm so glad that we have such a good crowd here and that we have a number of young women as well, so they can reflect on and learn from the example of our women veterans. Over 2 million women in this country have been veterans. We're never going to know the exact number, especially if you count the women who supported our military in wars like the American Revolution and the Civil War, before most, if not all of them, became official parts of the military. Each of them has a story to tell. I remember as a little girl learning about the first woman veteran I ever heard of. This was when I was growing up in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and going to Nurses Alumni Association events with my aunt. The veteran's name was Carol Ann Drasba. Carol Ann Drasba went to the same nursing school as my aunt. Upon graduation, she joined the military, and after hearing, or so the legend goes, after hearing so many troops being sent to Vietnam, urging her to sign up for duty in Vietnam as well so she could take care of them, Carol Ann went to Vietnam. And she and one of her nursing colleagues were the first two American service women to die in the Vietnam War. All of these 2 million plus veterans has a story to tell as well. But often their stories have not been told. As was so often the case across our society, women service members and women veterans were treated not as the norm, but as an exception. And as a result, so many of their stories have not been told, which is why gardens like this are so important. They urge us, whenever we see the plaque, to remember. And when we remember, we will honor those veterans, their service, and their stories. And we will also make sure that our living women veterans get all the services we need. It is absolutely wonderful that we now have a female director of Veterans Affairs on the state level. It is wonderful that we are going to have a state task force making sure that the needs of women veterans are met. We have great advocates locally in Rontochi who will speak next, and our good friend Hugh here in Greenburgh. But they need the resources, they need the programming to refer our women veterans to. And I look forward to seeing how much we are able to expand the offerings that our women veterans need and that they deserve, because they too put their lives on the line for this country. So thank you very much to all of our female veterans. Thank you very much to the people who are making sure that our women veterans are properly cared for, properly honored, and properly remembered.
I would now like to introduce Westchester County Director of Veteran Affairs, Mr. Ron Tochi. Mr. Ron Tochi and the Foundation have worked closely together for a number of years. We are pleased that his attendance once again shows his support for the mission of the Foundation and our focus on women veterans. Thank you, and now, as a fellow veteran, it is my distinct honor to welcome Mr. Tochi.
The most dynamic master of ceremonies. Anybody running for office should hire her as a campaign manager. God bless you. But that's what a veteran's all about. You know, no one has to convince me of the importance and the contributions of women, especially women veterans, throughout the history of this nation. I'm reminded all the time by my wife, my daughter, and my two grandchildren, my two granddaughters. I am delighted to be here today. The Lord is shining down on us. And on behalf of the county executive, who asked me to make sure I'm going to be here, and he didn't have to prod me to do that, I am very, very grateful for the town of Greenburgh, for all of my colleagues that follow us all around to all these different services. Senator Cousins, who and Shelley I've been with for the last 3 days, with several services. I can't begin to tell you how appreciative I am that you care enough and show the passion to show up at all these events. There's no question that the women who served our nation in uniform were obviously unheralded for many, many years. And I think it's important for us to lobby our school districts to make part of the education the history of all those people who contribute to the military from our inception up to this point, especially women. I read a lot of articles in the Elks magazine and the Knights of Columbus magazine, the Legion and so on, and there are great stories about women heroes that I never even learned about. And I think it's very, very important that our young people understand, because if we're going to pass that torch on about what a veteran is all about, and not only female but men and everybody that contributed towards the cause of sustaining this nation to make it what it is today, I think that's very, very important. Probably one of the most important things that I do is serving veterans, and I'm delighted that Mama Viv is now going to be the head of the State Veteran Agency. She and I are personal friends, and we learn from each other, and there's nobody more passionate than she is, and I'm sure she's going to do a great job. At the same time, I think it's important for me to acknowledge the fact that even though there are people who serve in combat, there are a lot of people who are part of the military family that don't get recognized, and they serve just like we do. The mothers, the fathers, and all the loved ones of people who have served, they stay home, they do their thing, they support, and they worry. They worry about the safety of the people that are away. And we recognize them too on Veterans Day and on Veterans Week. All over the nation this weekend, there are literally thousands and thousands of services. And people talk about remembering, and people talk about admiring the sacrifice and all of the contributions that people have made. Well, for the people that are not with us, those people whose names are inscribed in memoriam, we can only pray for them. At the same time, our mission is to pass on to the younger generation what veterans are all about, what Americans are all about, and all of us together. This is a peace garden, and I can't help but wanting to talk about something I did talk about yesterday. Peace, even though everybody fights for it, okay, when it's finally here, maybe we don't appreciate it as much as we should. But at the same time, the women, all throughout our history, have been the ones to advocate for peace. They're compassionate, they're caring, more so than we are. I don't know what it is. It's the makeup, maybe too much testosterone in the male or whatever it might be. But the women are the ones who advocate for peace. So I want to thank the Giordano Foundation, particularly Virginia. We've worked together for years and years to make it known that we care about peace and we care about those that made peace. But anyway, a personal story that I think indicates and illustrates what we're all about. Back in 1990, there was the Gulf War raging on. And there was a story that made the news, and it was the Make-A-Wish Foundation that found a 7-year-old by the name of Jimmy Kalinowski. His family was from Jersey. He was 7 years old, he was with brain cancer, and he was terminal. And his last wish was that he meet the boss of the country. So the Make-A-Wish Foundation arranged for him to be at an airport in Connecticut, and President Bush, #1, was going to stop there for a few minutes and greet Jimmy and autograph and talk about him. That happened. And the president was busy, obviously, with the war at the time, shook hands, signed an autograph, said nice things, got back in the plane and took off. Later on, a reporter interviewed little Jimmy and talked about, did you enjoy meeting the boss? And he said, yeah, it was great, but I wanted to talk to him. I wanted to go to his house. I wanted to learn more about what's happening. So he seemed a little bit disappointed, even though he was happy. A very, very dear friend of mine, a contractor, called me up and said, I'd like to do something for that little guy. Can you arrange arrange a special tour in Washington, D.C. And I did that, and he provided a limousine to pick up Jimmy, who's 7 years old, his little brother, who's 5 years old, his mom, Lori. They limousined them to Westchester County Airport. And a twin-engine Cessna took us to Washington, D.C., where a limousine picked us up. And then we watched Jimmy in the cockpit of the plane, in the co-pilot's seat, and he was having a ball driving the plane. Anyway, I asked him where he wanted to go when we got to D.C., and he suggested he wanted to go see the boss. So we did the tour, and then from there, I asked him, I said, let's go down to the Congressional Library and the dining room. And we went in. The Sergeant of Arms was more than gracious, and he talked to a lot of the senators. And then at the same time, one of the senators invited him back to his office. We went to his office, and Jimmy looked around with all of the different ceremonial plaques and so on, and he saw a big key, a gold key. And he asked the senator what that was, and he said, that's the key to Chicago. He said, that opens up everything in Chicago? And he said, yes, it does. He said, you like it? Yeah. He gave him the key, and Jimmy took the key home with him. He was in his glory. Then I asked him what else he wanted to do, and he wanted to see where they make the money. Went over to the Mint. The line was around the block 15 times, but I went in and talked to security, and they were more than gracious. He went down and we did a personal tour. From there, we went over to the guy who sits in the big chair. Lincoln, he wanted to see that guy. After we finished, we walked down the steps, and I said, Jimmy, would you like to see the Vietnam Vets Memorial? What's that? That's a place where a lot of soldiers fought, and they died in wars. So we went down, made the tour, and on the way out, he said to me, are they all buried in there? I said, they couldn't fit all the people in there. Those are just the names. And this little 7-year-old looked at me with tears coming down his eyes. And he said, how come they had to die? That's a tough question to answer. And I thought about it for a minute, and I said, you know, Jimmy, they died because they loved you, and they wanted this country to be at peace, and they wanted you to enjoy today like all the fun you're having. And he kind of accepted that. We got back in the limousine, and on our way back to the airport, he looked out the window and saw a homeless person sleeping on a bench. And he asked his mom, what's he doing? And she said, he's homeless. And this little guy said, well, we have a lot of room in our house, Mom. Let's take him home with us. This is a 7-year-old. Anyway, we got back to the airport. We flew back home. I asked the pilot to fly around the Statue of Liberty. It was lit up. At that time, you could do that. And we finally landed, got out of the plane. I hugged Jimmy. He hugged me. He said, will you always be my friend? And I said, forever. And I told him, I said, when baseball season starts, we're going to go down and see the Yankees, and you're going to sit in the boss's chair. And he was happy with that. Anyway, 7-8 months later, I asked my secretary to call and see how Jimmy was doing. She got on the phone and she burst into tears. And I knew right away Jimmy had passed on. But at the same time, I thought about it, and I said to myself, maybe someday somebody's going to come to a monument, a garden, or some kind of ceremonial monument and look and say, maybe a little Jimmy Kilinowski will say, what's that all about? So today, I want to thank everybody here in Greenburgh and anybody who participated. What a great idea. What a great tribute to veterans and to everybody. And especially thanks to all those women who served and did what they had to do. God bless all of you. Thank you again for being here today.
Thank you. And now, as a fellow veteran, it is my distinct honor to welcome Colonel Mary Westmoreland to the podium. But before she comes up, I would like to share a bit of information about her. Colonel Westmoreland is a decorated combat veteran with over 3 decades of service. Yes. This includes membership in the Coast Guard and later, the Army. She is a former chairwoman of the Advisory Committee on Women Veterans under the Secretary of Veteran Affairs, and for the final 2 years was the national chair. Besides her work on behalf of women who serve, Colonel Westmoreland is very active in her community as a dedicated volunteer with the New York City Midnight Run, the Rotary Club, and Bronxville Women's Club. Let's give a round of applause for Colonel Mary Westmoreland.
That was a long walk. This is indeed a privilege. It is to speak to before each distinguished guest sitting in the first row and the second. Thank you so much for being here, and your words are so inspiring. Generous supporters of the Barbara Giordano Foundation's vision to recognize and provide program support for women veterans, to the town of Greenburgh and Greenburgh Library leadership, and before me, my sisters and brothers in arms today, and our citizens and residents of Greenburgh and the surrounding communities who've attended, given up your Saturday morning for this. This beautiful Peace Garden dedication to women veterans. I can't beat the conversation shared with Tochi just recently. That's so beautiful, what you have just said, and the peace and the spirit of this garden reflects that. We served our nation wearing a uniform. That uniform reflected the choice we as free individuals made to volunteer with a capital V. Raise our right hand, and we took that oath. Women have volunteered throughout our nation's history, taking an oath or not, to a life-altering commitment of a few years, or as with me, decades, to adhere to the values and the behavior worthy of representing our country and its standards. Some of us, 50, 60, or 3 years ago, have experienced the underpinnings of our nation's needs and demands and the reflection of their stress on our performance. Whether we were single, married, or all of those things, we had faced that stress with great gallantry. Whether women served in combat or support positions, we were there, and in growing numbers. Today, we are still there. We started in small numbers, one, and we moved to many. To have this place to call ours in recognition of the sacrifices of women, we are mothers, aunts, sisters, and daughters made to serve us is a treasure for all of us, and I thank you on behalf of everyone. Centuries have passed, and this is now here in our own community, a special place, an acknowledgement of our contributions and sacrifices for many to see, for the public to sit and see, and for the youth of America to pass through this garden. It thrills me to learn today that it would be the Girl Scouts who'd be tending this garden. For me, that means a great deal. My history as a Girl Scout gave me the strength and confidence that brought me to the military. Barbara Giordano Foundation, thank you for leading the charge and bringing this all to us. In the time that I entered the military in 1976, I I was part of a whole new generation, a reorganization of the military. All the services, all the reserve components reorganized with an intent to integrate. And integrate women was my role. And I saw it as an individual coming as a woman already married with small children. As part of my contribution to the nation, I was so grateful for it, having done so well in my own personal career in the civilian side. Going in, there were just a few of us with great aspirations. Today there are so many, but I say to you that this garden reflects the enormous strength and the enormous resilience beyond which is put upon males in our ranks, because we juggle. And if we find ourselves as single mothers, as I experienced as a widow during my career, I understood immediately all the extra choices we had to make between our line of duty demands and our family, and how you juggled that. You, the women in this audience, and we did it. We did it well. So much so that our nation has the confidence to open the ranks formally to combat arms positions. But were we in combat before? The nation wasn't watching. We were in combat from the American Revolution on. And we've been there ever since. And you know, and I know, how many women were killed in combat. Over every war in this United States involved. So I am so pleased that in this Peace Garden, we can remember and reflect on the women who gave their lives as volunteers, whether paid or not paid, as in the early days. With benefits or no benefits, they did it. And they did it for what they believed. And they stood for the values we all stand for today, sitting in this audience. Thank you so much. I'm looking for Virginia here. I don't see her. There you are. Virginia, thank you for inviting me to speak. It is a privilege, as I said, but more so it's moving to me as a woman now 75 who looks back on decades and sees and reflects, and it forced me to reflect on what I witnessed. And I'm prouder than I've ever been before. Thank you all.
Thank you, Colonel Westmoreland, and all our guests, and especially to the over 2 million women who have served our nation. We have not forgotten your sacrifices. And let this garden be a constant reminder of a grateful nation. Once again, I want to introduce the 89th Guard Band under the direction of Mr. Russ Ebersole, Commander Russ Ebersole, who will lead us in singing God Bless America. Please stand. Thank you, everyone, for coming out.